Gregory Mahalik, FTH212. This is week 5 final assignment for this class. Today is the 20th of 2024. As you can see, our magazine well is free and clear. I can visually and physically look down the chamber. The firearm is now safe to handle and to use as a demonstration piece for part 1 of the 3 parts for week 5 assignment. So demonstrations, we already said, show and describe areas of firearm particular interest from inspecting the health. So I've just made a list here on my computer. I'm going to kind of read them off and talk about each one. So first thing I put down is slide to frame fitment, making sure the slide and the frame fit properly. There's not any excessive play. Next, I moved into the barrel. We want to make sure our rifling is not worn out, any bulges or anything going on in that barrel. We want to check our feeder amp, make sure we don't have any burrs, any issues there. Somebody grinding the feeder amp down too far, trying to polish, doing incorrect work. We also want to pay attention to our muzzle crown. Depending on what the firearm is going to be used for or has been used for, we could see damage to that crown and alter that crown to make that damage go away or prevent damage if a customer brings it to us and they want to use it for certain competitions, the regun, etc. Next, we want to make sure our sights are aligned. The night sights have not lost their tritium or any of their other chemicals they use to like the night sights eliminate. We want to make sure our sights are centered as well. We're not off too far to one side. We don't have any nicks in the sight, damage causing altered sight picture. We want to look at our headspace of the firearm, make sure we don't have excessive headspace, make sure our headspace is proper. Fire pin protrusion, make sure we don't have too short a fire pin or excessively too long punching primers out. I want to check that firearm spring as well to make sure that it is not excessively weak or broken or damaged. I'd like to check that last round holdback as well, especially if this is going to be a carry firearm or competition, stuff like that. We want to make sure that last round holdback works so we can dump a new mag, block the slide forward, and re-engage whatever we are engaging at the time of doing the reload. Make sure our frame has not been damaged, especially like when someone does stippling. Yes, I did finish it. I went and bought another iron to get it finished. I did not like having a half-done firearm after that wood burning iron burnt my hand for last week. So make sure someone didn't do any work and take the grips too far, the frame too far down, alter anything, trigger guard, cause frame fractures, anywhere stress could take a toll on it. Make sure everything on the slide's good. Someone milled for optics. Make sure they didn't mill it too deep, causing weakness in the slide, especially when we get up here around our chamber pressures and stuff in that breech area. Make sure our slide rails are not worn, and we want to make sure overall the firearm's not excessively dirty, hindering anything issues. Now, I did see the video from potentially this on someone's firearm was backwards. I went ahead and checked mine just to be sure. This actually is incorrect. The one that PSA sent me is black nitride. That is not the polymer in the back. Just wanted to make sure that was pointed out because that is obvious there. Part 2, identifying 10 learning experience. So quality tools equals quality work. That is the first one I put since we had issues with inferior tools for the stippling, resulting in potentially not as clean a stippling job. Quality tools, quality work. Build kits need love out of the box. New parts can have issues. So if you're quoting a job for a customer or something, one thing to stress, hey, it's this amount of time to build it, but we could potentially run into problems after we build it and need to fine tune it due to the issues that some of us had on PSA daggers, me being one of them. Stippling takes a lot of practice. So I would practice on junk frames, junk magazines, working on this magazine versus working on the polymer on the PSA dagger frame. The heat that is needed and the way the material moves is different. So knowing and practicing on what you're going to be doing the work on will result in better quality work. And the only way to learn that is through practice and doing more frames and magazines. When your customers come in, you already got an advantage. There's a lot to learn on Strikerfired pistols that SDI did not teach us. So I'm going to study, research, and learn more and continuing my firearm learning process. Modifications of striker firearms are vast. Need to practice and research to further learn how to do them, such as porting the barrel, slide cuts, optic cuts, different compensators, different tuning springs for different reloads, different slide weights, depending on if you port slide cuts, run compensators, there's going to be issues with the slides. So tuning that firearm and understanding how everything works together to give the customers a reliable working firearm. PSA doesn't stand behind their products. I had them numerous issues with this firearm, emailed them, never got a response. Here we are in 4 weeks now since I emailed them, nothing. So I will not be repping PSA stuff. Used all other stuff, not any further. Before you assemble components, make sure they work per the manufacturer's recommendations. Learn that here with this compensator. If you go to Strike Industries' website, it says only to use on Glock OEM slides only, or Glock OEM slide cuts. Our dagger here is tapered. Glock slides aren't. That's why we get to play. as I demonstrated in the discussion post. So for customers come in, they're not going to want a firearm that does that. If I went to a gunsmith and got that back, I would be questioning it. So putting on parts only for the models that they are specified for, less customer states and signs liability waivers, other stuff like that, to prevent further issues down the line from when they come back and say something. A lot of Glock models can interchange parts, so understanding what Glock models can interchange, what Glock models cannot, between generations, between models, something I know very little about because I'm not a Glock fanboy. But if customers come in and want stuff done, I'd have to do adequate research before I can make them a proper recommendation. Strikerfired, while Strikerfired all use a striker, the internal components of them differ. So just because you're familiar with one brand of Strikerfired firearm and how they operate and everything does not mean that it's carry over to another firearm. So study, learn your firearms, each one, before you make incorrect recommendations or tell the customer, oh yeah, it's going to be 10-minute repair and you're in there 10 hours. So make sure you give the right recommendations and know what you're talking about. Another thing I've noticed in this is a lot of students in discussion posts did not like Glock. Yet, Glock is a heavily cloned firearm. A lot of people that I know do not like Glock. But yet, we see a lot of Glock clones out there. It's just a kind of interesting deal. For as many people don't like them, there's more, I guess, that do like them and more that want to clone them and copy them. So part 3, one modification that we want to make to our firearm. I want to polish this trigger. I do not like it. So express why we'd like to make this modification. I want to smooth the trigger, overall feel, and it costs less to do the work than it does to swap out a new trigger. Especially going into some of them higher end triggers. They get very pricey very fast. How much time would it take to do this modification the first time? Probably a couple hours. As you do them more, you'll be able to refine that task and get the time frame in less time. How much will this cost in materials and goods? So I have a lot of equipment needed to do this from the associates program as well as this handgun program, but breaking it down anyways for, let's say I didn't have that equipment or I exhaust that, needing to know what it's going to cost to replace that stuff. For that Flitz polish, you're looking about $10, depending on where you look at a line. A Dremel, $50 to $100, depending on brand and model. The wool felt tips to use for polishing, $10 to $20, depending on the quantity and where you order them from. Polishing stones from $50 to $100, depending on what brand, the amount that are in there, stones you order. Sandpaper, probably about $10 for a pack of sandpaper if you get varying grits. How much would I charge to perform this modification at customer's firearm? $60 an hour plus shop fee of a flat rate for $35 material, and that $35 would cover your sandpaper, your felt tips, the polish, your expendable material that you're going to continually have to replace. Called a shop local, a buddy of mine owns it, called him and said, hey man, what do you charge for doing polishing work on triggers, Glock, stuff like that? They charge $75 an hour plus materials that they use. They don't do a flat rate. I've learned to do that flat rate from being a mechanic, working in shops and field mechanic my whole life. We would do a percentage of the bill, and that covered our uniform cleaning costs, rags, brake clean, expendable stuff like that, and it works really well. The mechanic industry uses it very heavily. There's a lot of gripes from customers. Oh, you charge me $5 for a can of brake clean. You use that whole brake clean? So we just do a flat rate charge. It covers all that stuff, and it's a percentage of the bill. The bigger the bill, the bigger the percentage, because normally the larger that repair bill, therefore you had used more shop materials for that stuff. That will conclude week 5, module 5 assignment on all 3 parts.